Hello, this is Big Red. Welcome to the Big Red for America show. I'm joined live here with my producer Mark. We're going to look at the Republicans retaking the House. We're going to look at Biden's major classified blunders and just kind of continue our look into 2023. This is Big Red, and you're listening to the Big Red for America show. All right, I am joined here live in the studio with Mark. Mark, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. It's always nice when we can do this in person.
Yes, we're coming at you live in the same room. Always a pleasure. So when we left off last time, a little saddened about the 2022 midterms. Looking forward, some good strengths Republicans can take away from that election, and now here we are, new year. Seems like a little bit of a new Republican Party. What do you think about McCarthy's race for Speaker?
So we're recording it now, where it's already been decided McCarthy is the Speaker. He's won it, and I make that point just because there's two sides of, I think, what to say about McCarthy's speakership. The first half is what happened before he became Speaker, and then the next part is what he did immediately after he became Speaker. And the first part, I was with him for the stopping of electing him for debate at the beginning. About after the fourth or fifth vote, it didn't seem like they were doing it. It seemed like concessions were made for what the people who were doing the holdout that wanted a debate and changes made. The new people that were continuing the holdout seemed like they were sort of on that float in that line of, were they doing it for their own pleasure, for their own grandiose demeanor, were they doing it for the Republican Party? And it started to get a little gray area in there. So I'm not really a fan of them doing it, 15, 16 votes or whatever it was all the way through, because I think they already had a lot of concessions made at the beginning. Now, granted, what they did end up getting out of it is pretty awesome. So it was kind of worth it. They did get a lot of great things, which we can discuss that. But I really want to talk about McCarthy after he became. He's doing great things since he's become Speaker. One thing he's doing that I wish more conservatives would do is he said, you know what, I'm going to be fair and honest. I'm going to let you guys pick whoever Democrats want to be on their committees. They can pick whoever they want. So he did that. But he said there's two people I'm not going to allow on these committees because basically of how often they lie. Swalwell and Schiff. And what's awesome about that is when he was pressed on it, he didn't back down at all. When they said, oh, look, you're not doing what you said, you're not allowing these people to pick their own people on committees, he said, no, I'm doing what I said. I'm just not going to allow someone who's lied to the American people for so long be on such an important committee, because it's obvious that he doesn't tell the truth, which is the right thing to do. But the important thing there is he didn't back down from the fight as soon as he got a little pressure from the media, and it all worked out. So I hope that there's a key lesson there from a lot of them where it's just don't back down because you feel like you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, for all our listeners out there who might not be familiar, Eric Swalwell, I believe 100% confirmed sleeping with a Chinese spy.
Yeah.
So that is a great person. And I think he was on the House Intelligence Committee.
The FBI came out and said to the Intelligence Committee members that there is alarming details about Swalwell.
Yeah, they were saying, I'm picking up what you're saying. McCarthy was kind of quoting that. They were like, under no circumstances would Swalwell ever pass a background check. Yep. He should not be allowed anywhere close to classified documents. He is way too compromised. So there's a little bit of background on that. And then with Adam Schiff, with the new Twitter files drop, it essentially alluded to him knowingly perpetrating the Russia, I believe it was a Russia collusion hoax. So he knew that it was false, but still chose to grandstand before the media. So obviously not, and just continued to lie in front of the American people, like Mark was saying. So in case you're not familiar with that, that's kind of the background on those two particular gems in the Democratic Party who held high positions of power in the party. I mean, Swalwell tried to run for president, and then Schiff, also a very prominent Democrat on the January 6th committee on both of Trump's impeachment trials, I want to say. I'm presenting that before the Senate. So these are high-ranking Democrats that have...
And when we say that, like, Swalwell, like, I don't think he was a big player to begin with, so he's not a big deal. Schiff is actually a big player in the Democratic Party, like you said, he was one of the attorneys that went over to actually prosecute in front of the Senate, present the impeachment. The thing with him is he, if you remember, he was on CNN 24/7 during the Russian collusion hoax, but he didn't just say like he concluded. He said, "I have physical evidence Trump is a Russian asset." There's literally tapes of him saying that. So the fact that no one has ever called him out saying like, dude, you lied, like what the heck? And I've said this on the podcast 100 times. Like, if you're a Democrat, you should be going the shift being like, you told me this dude's a Russian stooge. You said you have evidence. Where's the evidence? Yeah. No one's doing that. But the fact that now he's getting called out is nice to see.
Yeah, he pulled like a complete McCarthy. It's like, I have in this file communist sympathizers, communist agents within the government, and he kind of did the same thing, despite the fact that it was proven false. And then going back to the vote to get McCarthy in a speaker, I didn't follow, obviously, votes 10 through 15, or really much of them. I saw that the Freedom Caucus was holding out kind of against McCarthy and looking for these concessions. So I don't know how much of that, once they already had everything, were there still holdouts because there was but I am glad that we did get what we did get. So part of that was we're now holding the speaker a little bit more accountable, is that he can be essentially rescinded at any time. So, and with the Republicans having such a small majority, if the Freedom Caucus were to decide to not back McCarthy, or to continue to back McCarthy like they kind of did in his initial vote, he could be ousted as speaker. So there is actually a little bit of pressure to toe the line. And that pressure is definitely present with the Democrats too. It's just not external. I'm sure you don't get people voting like that in lockstep unless there is some sort of pressure put on them. It's just not quite external like we saw with the McCarthy vote.
Yeah, and if you're a libertarian, or if you're middle of the road, you don't know what you're conservative, Democrat, you kind of vote wherever your morals take you, if you will. There should be a glaring difference between how Republicans handle these issues and the Democrats. For example, Democrats, if you have like the people inside their party, their Freedom Caucus, that are pushing for these changes, there's so much fear from the leadership in the Democratic Party that they still stay in line no matter what. AOC doesn't buck the trend because there's so much fear. There's such a grasp of total like authoritarianism in the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, there was a lot of people who hated everything the Freedom Caucus was doing and still came out saying like, but it's good that we have the opportunity to have these discussions in this kind of conflict.
Yeah, and that conflict we should really see kind of, it should be what we see in the House.
That's the way our government's supposed to work. There's supposed to be conflict. It's supposed to be hard to do stuff.
Yes, it should. Originally, the founders intended for it to be incredibly difficult to pass any legislation, with the idea being, with it being hard to pass legislation, it would kind of self-limit the size of the federal government. But we've kind of seen workarounds around that, with the Democrats trying to get rid of the filibuster, so they continue to pass legislation along a very slim majority position there in the Senate, with the Democrats really voting in lockstep to completely as one block, with bills coming up very quickly and these votes on them, just kind of jamming legislation through. We've kind of seen the ballooning of the federal government and kind of the end of debate in Congress. So Democrats were really quick to jump on, the Republicans don't want to get anything done, they're the party of do-nothings. Look at all this chaos. The media was really focusing on the chaos. Like, the Republicans are in chaos. And I believe it was somebody on the Heritage Network said that, don't confuse debate with chaos. And like Mark was saying, we should be having spirited debates especially in our Congress. Like, we shouldn't be rushing these things through. We need these policies, these people that we elect, these people that we put on their committees, these are heavy assignments that we truly need to take time and thought to consider, not just a midnight vote to jam through a $1.7 trillion spending package like they did right before the beginning of the new year.
Yep. There's actually one of the better things that came from the holdout was they changed the rules where the bills, I believe, have to be of a limited scope. They can't be 10,000 pages long or something crazy like that. But more importantly, there has to be a minimum time frame allowed for people to read the bills now, because they were putting bills out within a day, and they were 5,000 pages. no one's going to be able to read 5,000 pages and strike stuff and negotiate and figure out what they want in and out. But now, and I don't remember the exact, I want to say it's 72, at least 72 hours
Yeah,
to read it.
that's the new limit, 72 hours.
That's a big deal, though.
Yeah, actually that forces it at least forces the government to slow down. We can't have. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, I believe, said for Obamacare, like, don't read it after we pass it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, so I don't. And everyone who voted along with that should have known better. But
Well, it's sort of, and we could talk about the debt ceiling at some point if we want to, but I was just reading today that the White House says that they are shocked that there would even be any stipulations attached to raising the debt ceiling. They don't understand why we wouldn't just do it with carte blanche, no rules, no nothing, no safeguards, nothing involved. And it's like, wait, what? When has that ever happened?
yeah, because Biden believes that he's the second coming of FDR and can just spend the American populace into prosperity, which didn't even happen under FDR and definitely won't happen under Biden, which is kind of why we're still seeing this stagnation and this increase in inflation. I know, Mark, you were telling me that the Fed said that the inflation crisis was solved because we didn't see the month-to-month 2% rise that they kind of accounted for, even though we're still at whatever we are, 6, 7, 8%.
Yeah, I might be butchering this article, but it was something along the lines of they expected it to go up 8 or 10% for the year, but because it didn't, it fell less than 2%, which their goal is to have 2% growth over a year. So because the growth didn't fall within 2%, so it was less than 8% if it was 10%, if that makes sense. So if they expected 10, there was less than 8. So they said that's a good thing because we were hoping for 2. So if you like try to wrap your head around that, you're like, wait, how that doesn't even like I can't even think of a way mathematically to make that sound good other than reading it in the article. If you read through it, you're like, oh, yeah, well, they said that's a nice thing. It sounds nice. But if you put like 1, maybe 4 seconds of thought, you're like, wait, they don't have anything to do with each other. Why would those metrics matter? Like,
And one of the funniest things about inflation is Joe Biden was bragging on Twitter. Hey, Social Security benefits have grown for under my presidency an exorbitant amount. They've grown the largest they have in the past 20, 30 years. But the American people, I guess, don't know that Social Security benefits are pinned to inflation. So Joe Biden was actually bragging for the fastest or largest growth in inflation in the past and over the past decade. So I just really thought that was funny that he was actually bragging about that.
yeah, I think it's also the largest wage growth right now and for a while. Granted, you're still losing money because inflation's still 3% higher than wage growth, but the wage growth is still the best ever, according to him, I believe.
Yeah, I believe it was NPR. I think I have this stat on my Twitter. They said because he's bragging about wage growth, all of that, but index for inflation, I think we've seen a 2% shrink. Personal savings are actually down 70%. So that's an improvement. That's something we like to see.
But to his benefit of the doubt, you don't need savings if you're going to rely on the government.
That's true. If the government's just going to give you everything you want, I guess it's true. You don't really need savings. So I think we got some good concessions out of McCarthy for the speaker vote, and I think it will show some promise. We'll have to see how it's used for these 2 years, but I think some of the biggest and most interesting things are going to come from now that the Republicans can control who or what they're going to investigate. They already mentioned they're going to investigate Afghanistan, which I know Biden's worried about. They're planning on investigating the weaponization of the FBI, which we saw with Twitter leaks that the FBI was colluding with Twitter to block users that they deemed unsafe or that were violating. They were recommending users to Twitter.
The good news with that is apparently the way they're investigating that is I want to say it's a special committee, but I think there's even a different name for it. A special way they're investigating the FBI, and it's like government overreach. But it gives them even more subpoena power. So it gives them even more power to bring people in and question. And I just read today, Jim Jordan announced, I think it's something like 14 or 18 FBI whistleblowers have come forward, and he thinks he'll be able to at least get 4 to 5 of them to testify in person in a public hearing.
That's crazy. I mean, truly, I want to see people fired. I just don't understand why those people can get moved around. Maybe because it's a bureaucracy, it's government, but I think a big part of like quote unquote tackling the swamp would be going after the FBI, some of the intelligence community, that gets at least some accountability there, particularly the FBI interfering with, I think, what now several elections. They lied about the Hunter Biden laptop. They essentially groomed Twitter, if you look through the Twitter files, into believing that the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russian attack story, which was false. They're continuing to advocate for the banning of certain users, which is obviously a violation of the First Amendment. So I think a lot.
In the most recent election, the midterms, now that we know all these documents are coming out from Biden, um, I just read today the actual time when they alerted that the first two times they found classified information at Biden residences or buildings happened before the midterm elections, and the news media knew about it because it was reported to them before the election, and no one reported on it until after the election.
Well, of course they don't want
That's
to.
interference yet again.
Yeah, of course they don't want to actually do anything that they think is going to hurt Biden. But it's interesting now. Now we can kind of move over to that topic because I'm sure that will also be a topic of investigation. But I mean, I'm young enough to remember. I guess I'm old enough to remember them calling Trump for treason for having classified documents in his in his private residence, and now Biden turns out took classified documents, kept them in a think tank, a Chinese-funded think tank at University of Pennsylvania, and his own private residence. And now they're saying, well, why we should give him the benefit of the doubt.
I mean, that's a narrative with politicians, the White House, obviously. Like, that's actually not surprising to me. I mean, that seems like the exact response I'd expect from them in this situation. The only thing that really surprised me really about this was number one, the vastness of stuff they're finding, not just like the amount of documents, but the locations that they're finding them at. And then also at these locations, what financing was going, because it wasn't like some of them they found at his house in his super safe garage that has a Corvette in it. Some of them they found in another house he owned somewhere else. But then they found a bunch of classified documents in a safe in his office at one of his charity or benefit centers. That center gets most of its funding from the Chinese government. Supposedly, those documents were about China, UK, and Ukraine. Like, I'm not trying to connect the dots there because, I don't want to say something that's not there, but that should probably be looked into. That's pretty
Yeah,
serious.
he had a lot of documents at a residence that his son Hunter Biden um, was claiming rent at. And I saw an article. I don't know whether this is true or not. That apparently Hunter Biden was paying $50,000 a month in rent to stay at Biden. Hunter was paying Joe $50,000 a month for that house. I don't know whether that's correct or not, but we have Hunter Biden, who has known questionable connections to Ukraine, to China, and now we have classified documents kind of sitting out there that he has access to, and he has access to these corrupt nations. Um, that is definitely something that needs to be investigated in. But I think it's interesting. Part of the defense is that, oh, well, Trump had so many documents, but Biden only had a few, so it's not the same thing. But I don't think, to my understanding, the president is the only one with the power to declassify documents. So anything that Joe Biden had at that time, Vice President Joe Biden had in his possession were definitely illegally taken.
Well, I think there's two things to think about that too, right? Is number one, yes, there is proof that some of the documents came while he was vice president, not president. So the argument that he automatically has veto power because he's president now, I mean, well, a lot of them came from before he was president. So that washes that whole theory out the window. The other thing is if it's, Trump had thousands of documents, he only had a handful here and there that he left out. Doesn't it matter what the content of the documents is? For example, or if they're just like little tiny things Trump did and he kept them as souvenirs because he liked the way his name looked on it, but they didn't have much like the nuclear codes or like super secret top secret information, they were just marked classified because there are different levels of classification. So if they're just like stuff that Trump got because his ego's inflated, so y'all know he has a great ego, is that as important as, let's say hypothetically, Biden has the list of Chinese US operatives in China, or let's say he has the military secrets on what we would do in certain situations if China attacked Taiwan? That seems, even if that's one document compared to 1,000 documents, which one's more important to keep secret than the other?
And that was true because they were talking about, oh, Biden fully cooperated versus Trump's lawyers argued with the National Archives, which is, I mean, which makes sense if you're arguing over what's actually classified, what's important or not. Because you could have these old documents that I don't know whether he did classify them or not, but regardless of regardless of that, the media was never making the argument that, oh, Trump had a lot of documents, therefore he should be arrested. They said he just had in his possession classified items, therefore he should be arrested. So, according to that logic, they should be clamoring for Biden's arrest, but I don't see that anywhere.
So that's the interesting thing too, right? Is you're right, but they couldn't because if it's all about quantity or if it's just in general classified stuff, well, they can't do that because Hillary Clinton had a whole server of classified stuff. So she had hundreds of thousands, if not tens of thousands of documents marked classified. That's been proven they were classified in there. We don't know how many because computers delete themselves. But because we don't know how many, she got off scot free. So basically, then the question is there a double standard?
Absolutely. I remember watching James Comey, former FBI director, James Comey, getting on, his press conference, and he said, yes, we found documents on Hillary Clinton's server that were classified. Yes, she shouldn't have had that server. She shouldn't have had that server. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I might actually see him arrest her or say, like, hey, we're going to press criminal charges. And at that point, she was still running for president, I believe. And then he was like, but I'm deciding not to pursue this any further. So I thought, what? That to me is like seeing that just blatant double standard or lack of standards. Because if you have double standards, you don't have standards at all. That complete lack of standard is probably one of the first things I can at least remember from my adult life, definitely destroying my faith in the federal government.
Yeah, yeah. I always try to avoid whataboutism for that same reason of keeping different standards for different people and all that stuff. So I've always tried to avoid it. But it's getting to the point where like if Biden if they indict Trump and they actually try to like send him to prison for this stuff, and then I'm not saying whether or not he should or shouldn't go, but if that happens, and then Biden, they say, well, no, it's okay, nothing's wrong, and he gets like zero retributions. I mean, that's what causes all this, like these people so frustrated at the government where they're willing to storm a Capitol. All these people that are that frustrated, it's because they see this whataboutism. They're told, well, that's whataboutism. Don't look at that. It's okay. Ignore that. But then after you've seen it 45 times and you keep saying like, holy crap, there's a different standard and you're told to ignore it, eventually you just blow a gasket and you go, okay, dude, there's obviously two standards here. How do I get on the other standard? Like,
So now, Merrick Garland, Attorney General Merrick Garland, has appointed a special counsel to investigate this matter. I wonder if the media is going to report about this 24/7, try to get the whistleblower like they did with the Trump Russia collusion scandal. I forget who was the name of the special counsel, the Mueller Mueller report. I wonder if they're going to be up in this special counsel's face as they try to be with special counsel Mueller. So I think that'll be extremely interesting.
I will say Garland did something I was impressed with because I figured, number one, I was surprised he did a special counsel. I think he was kind of backed into a corner with it because of Trump having a special counsel for basically the same thing. But I was surprised he did it. As soon as I heard it was a special counsel, without knowing any other info, I just figured he'd pick someone that worked with, that's been in the swamp for a while, and they just do walk the walk, and it would just be like a paperwork type thing. It's like, let's make everyone happy, make it look like it's legit. We'll just put out whoever, some guy. But he actually picked, which good for him. He picked someone who was appointed by Trump to be the special, which I was like, okay, you didn't do the obvious thing. You actually did something that seems, at least on the face of it, to be like you legit care and want to find out what's happening.
So going on that point, we have a special counsel, apparently someone appointed by Trump, to investigate Joe Biden and this classified documents. So we were talking earlier about some potential conspiracy theories. There seem to be some on the right and the left that believe that this was a leak, and they kind of believe that it was leaked for essentially the same reason. It was leaked to bring down Biden, the right kind of thinks that it's to bring down so they can arrest Trump and then they'll take down Biden and run someone else like Gavin Newsom or somebody else in 2024, essentially making sure Biden doesn't run because he's sitting horrendously unpopular right now. Will probably lose as long as Trump doesn't run in 2024, but even the polls right now say that's kind of up in the air. But what do you think about kind of those thoughts?
I've gone back and forth because I know we talked about this a couple days ago, and then I kind of changed my mind as I was reading because basically there's so much information coming out about what these leaks are, and then there's like it's like every day there's a new spot they find documents. So it's just happening so fast. It's hard if I'm looking from the point of view of like a strategist for the Democratic Party. It's hard to say what the right play is because the other thing too is I don't give people the benefit of being that smart, if that makes sense. Like to put that much thought and planning out on something, I just don't think people are generally like, I don't think people are intelligent enough to do that, just in general. You know, there's too many things, like there's too many people involved, and something would get leaked out that they're doing this or something, something along those lines. Saying that though, I wouldn't be surprised if there's grievances inside of Biden's camp, and it's a group of people who found these documents and then they leaked it. Maybe with the idea of getting rid of Biden because they want a Kamala Harris or they want someone more progressive in it. Because you got to think he's surrounded himself with super progressive people. So if he's not able to do the immediate authoritarian stuff that they want him to do, like he hasn't gone far enough, they might be trying to do what you're saying. The other thing too is he might genuinely think, or the Democratic Party, that they have such good control over the media and the narrative out there right now, because historically the last couple of years they have, where they might have found these documents and decided, wait, we can get ahead of this and just spin the narrative we want and it'll go away.
And that's probably more
I mean, they've
likely.
done that for years, right?
Yeah, yeah, and giving credence to your point, I just don't think people are generally that smart to try to do some sort of superpower play to get Biden out of office because I think, unfortunately for the Democrats, Biden's the most popular one they got. Just looking at some polls online, I mean, he's blowing everyone else out of the water. If they're truly trying to pave the way for Newsom 2024, Newsom is horrendously unpopular. I have him polling here half a percentage point above AOC, so he's sitting at 7% right now. Horrendously unpopular, so unpopular, even in his own state, they voted to recall him, and he almost lost. So I don't think, unless it's not Newsom, unless it is Buttigieg, or they're trying to make the way for Kamala 2024, but I think that the Democrats are too smart of strategists to try to blow their golden goose, which is Biden. I get it if Biden was maybe not giving them what they want, but in every sense, he's giving them exactly what they want. He is a simple rubber stamp for their policies. So I don't see, and he's at least a friendly face to their horrendous policies.
And your point with their strategy is I do think they're smart enough because they've been proven to be smart enough in this standpoint where they gotta know they don't have anyone as popular as they think they do. And they gotta know if they I almost feel like, and I know I mentioned this the other day, I almost feel like this might be a strategy for them to allow Trump to get off scot-free. And then here's my theory on that. And this is a little bit out there. But basically, if they can get Biden out there, they can have the special counsel come through. Biden gets off without any trouble. And then they go, okay, well, look, and it's very similar to Trump. We let Trump off without any trouble. See, we didn't play double standards. And then that's kind of the narrative to go with. See, we were fair and honest and we did this right. Trump doesn't get in trouble. Or maybe they both just get a slap on the wrist or something like that. If they do that, then they have an out where they don't have to run anyone else. Like they know Trump was, because the best option they have on winning is if Trump runs, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
But the other thing is, if they already built this bridge and they went down this road of Trump's going to get arrested, if they didn't do this and Trump did go to jail for it, number one, people are going to be more angry. They're going to be more upset because Trump is such a hothead right now. But who's going to take over for Trump? Right now it's DeSantis, and I hate looking at polls. I don't believe him. I don't trust him. but name one other person that can even compete with Ron DeSantis on any political side.
Not in the Republican Party, I can't think
If I'm a
of anyone.
Yeah, if I'm a Democratic strategist, I'm looking at that saying we should do whatever we can to keep DeSantis out of this race, which might be keeping Trump in it by having Biden stuff leak.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the makes the most sense to me. Is just okay. Yeah, oh, Trump did it. Maybe we overplayed our hand right now a little bit. Pissed too many Republicans off. Now this gets leaked with Biden, whether it was intentional or not. They'll kind of use this moment to be like, oh, well, we investigated Biden. He's fine. So yeah, we're not going to do anything with Trump.
Because the best of both worlds in there, and if it was me, it would be the best of both worlds if that got leaked. Because number one is Biden gets off scot-free, and then you still have Trump in, so you have this heated race where they always do better when they fearmonger. So now they have that devil for them to put up there on the altar and be like, look who we're running against, all this. But then if vice versa happens, if it actually does turn out to be something, and Biden gets in trouble for it, well then you have to give Trump probably the same kind of punishment. So then Trump gets in trouble and he doesn't run, but then now they can replace Biden with whoever they want, right? So in their mind, they might be looking at it as like it's not much of a downside because it might bring up so much stuff going on they can control it. The other thing is that now that it happened after the midterm is it's so long before the next election. This could be a long ploy to build someone like a Gavin Newsom. Like I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 3 to 6 months, or maybe even less than that, you start to see them pulling people out and putting them into news things to talk about this and to help control the narrative to see if they can get anyone to place them to be that person who comes in as the guy, the man, knight of shining armor to save the day and save the republic. Wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing people come out as that person for the Democratic Party and they start trying to test out those waters, playing the long game. Let this run out for 2 years till the next election. And then if there's someone that looks like they're a Ron DeSantis of the Democrats, then they're like, okay, let's prosecute.
Yeah, yeah. Except I don't think they're definitely. I mean, just looking at their bench, unless they would have to dig up somebody and really try to build them because they just don't have. I'm looking at these names right here. Obviously, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg. Who does he even work in the federal government anymore? We've had all these crises, and he's not around. Bernie Sanders, who's just as old, if not older than Joe Biden, and I think Americans would have a hard time electing a true, honest-to-goodness socialist. I don't see that being very popular with independents. Hillary Clinton, some reason still on this list.
And here's the other thing too, is I was looking at this morning, is so the Democrats look at the young people they have put up to be the future of their party. They haven't fared very well. For example, Stacey Abrams was going to be the future president of the world. And they, after the first election, when she just barely lost to Brian Kemp, just barely, they said, well, it's going to be a sweep next time. She's the future of the party. And she lost by more points the next election.
She also went broke.
And I look at the next future of the party, who was the future of the party at the time, Beto, everyone's favorite hippie. He was going to be the next Obama.
He was.
And now he just got smoked in Texas.
Again.
But it seems like their track record of picking the young person to take over the party is way worse than the Republicans' track record of picking. Because whether or not you like her or you hate her, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they tried to destroy her as like the next person that's going to be, and the Republicans kind of just let her go. And she's still out there. She's still very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Look at
definitely.
all the Matt Gaetz, all the freedom fighters, the Freedom Caucus people that were out there. These are the young people coming up. But not only them, the Dan Crenshaws, who are totally opposite side of the Freedom Caucus on their side. But that, or the Ted Cruz, who's been in it for a while, but now he has a huge voice in the Republican Party. But there's that unity there where there's like at least a consistency coming from the Republicans, where they're bringing in people and they kind of shed the fat of the people who don't follow what they're doing, if that makes sense, or not conservative, where the Democrats seem to be picking the people that just check boxes. And then that just backfired over and over and over and over again. So it might be good if they replace Biden with someone like that.
Well, I think that's true, because I think whoever you replace Biden with is almost a for sure victory. At least, for the Republicans. But I know I thought that before, and I've been disappointed. Um, but that would be interesting. The young people thinking about people like Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, um, who's not very popular outside her district in New York. Once again, socialist just proves that she understands nothing about the world. Um, she was ranting about gas stoves and how they make people dumber, and then in the background of her Instagram live stream, it was they were able to find out that she also owned a gas stove. So that might explain a few things, but she's really backed off that right now. It seems just, but yeah, I think future of the Democrats. I mean, they might not have anybody right now, but they seem to sure have a lot of support among the youngins.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get really pretty darn close to a libertarian person in the next election. It seems like that's the path we're headed down, is a true third party candidate's going to come out, and it's going to get weird before it happens. So it might not be the next election. It might be 2 elections from now or 3 elections, but it's going to be like next election. I bet you someone's going to get real close. Like third party, like it's going to be so like not close to winning, but like up in the debate, like where no one's ever been before, and people are going to, oh crap.
Like
Then
Liz
the next
Cheney?
one it'll be closer. Yeah. Well, no, I think it'll be the opposite side of it. It'll be the Democrats will have a third party of a moderate. Because I mean, look, you saw the what's her name that ran for the Democratic Party, and she just left the Democratic Party.
Oh, Gabbard?
Yeah, Gabbard. And I actually liked her out of the Democrats. She was one of my more favorite. I didn't agree with her foreign policy, but I liked her as a person. I always said if I had to vote for a Democrat out of those group of people because I hated Trump, she would have been one of the top choices. And she left. So now if she decides to run again for president, she's going to just pull people away from the Democrats. She'll pull a little Republicans, but she's going to pull a lot of moderate Democrats that are like, you guys are getting nuts on me.
Yeah. Yeah. And we might see that a good view of that might be Arizona 2024, because our Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who has decided to no longer caucus with the Democrats.
Yeah, that's another great example.
So now that she's it's not going to change her track record. She's still very liberal, but at least believes in rule, not overriding the filibuster. So the Democrats still can't do that. They can't, because I don't think Joe Manchin will budge either on the filibuster.
But see, like a Liz Cheney running independent, I think she pulls a very small fraction of Republicans, and she pulls a very small fraction of Democrats. But like a Gabbard or a Sinema running for president, someone who was in the Democratic Party and said, "You guys are too crazy. I'm leaving to to be outside of here because you guys went too far left." Those people will pull a very little Democrat or very little Republicans, but they'll probably pull a massive amount of Democrats.
Well, I even saw a poll that if Cheney were to run, she'd pull more from Biden than she would Trump.
Yeah.
So she would be the sinking ship. And once again, you can for me, I mean, it makes logical sense to me. You can determine who the more radical party is if you have a true independent who has more votes siphoned off. Does that make sense? So in any time an independent third party candidate runs, it's a problem for Democrats. The Democrats get more votes siphoned off. They say if Sinema runs in 2024, they threw up like 2 random candidates. They had Kari Lake, and then I forget the Democratic candidate, but they would say Kari Lake would win. Easy. Because the Democrats would lose a big portion of their vote to Sinema, which could be because she used to be a Democrat. But with Liz Cheney too, they estimated her polling about 10%, and like 8 of that 10% would come from Biden's camp, giving Trump like a 45 to like 38 victory, something like that.
That's what I see happening. So that's the 2 things I see happening in the election from now. Granted, we're a long ways away from it, but it's either Biden gets in trouble, can't run, and then they attack Trump with the same thing, and then you have 2 people, no Biden, no Trump, that runs. So I guess 3 things really. So that's option 1. Option 2 is they both get in trouble, Biden and Trump. Biden gets impeached, but he stays in office because of the Senate. Trump gets in trouble, but he still is able to run and still does this Trump stuff and still runs. So then you have Biden who's impeached, Trump who's a former president impeached twice, both of them running, got in trouble. And then you have 2 or 3 independents that run, and then it's just a madhouse. And it just because then you have people saying like this guy's corrupt, this guy's corrupt, no, they're corrupt, no, this independent Liz Cheney, and then Gabbard, and then all these people, and then it's just all the way through the election. Like not even like I'm talking 5 people all the way through to election day
Wow.
type deal. Or they both get, or it's so the first one was they both can't run, 2 people run, or they both get off scot free, and then we just have a repeat of the last election, which I think is what the Democrats actually want to have.
That is definitely that's the best case scenario for the Democrats. Totally. But I think it's interesting. You're talking about like the formation of like we could see third party candidates. We could see even a third party kind of crop up. Because this is the closest thing we've ever had to like a coalition government like they have in the UK, where they have many parties in the UK. Often one doesn't have enough power doesn't have a majority, so they have to team up with different other parties and kind of agree on a general agenda so they can all kind of together as a coalition form a majority, which is definitely what we're seeing right now. We're seeing GOP plus Freedom Caucus to make up this majority. So it'll be interesting to see as this legislative session plays out how that works together.
Yeah, and I think there's a good difference to make on the way it happens between the two of them. So for example, Republicans, of course they have their own caucuses, they have the Freedom Caucus, they have all these different things, but then there's a conservative. So they have the same groups as the Democrats. But the big difference is with the Republicans and the conservatives is they're all individuals as well. So even if one person caucuses with this group over here, if something happens and they don't like it, they don't believe they work for the American people as a whole, if you will. They work for the people who elected them. So they do what's in the best interest of that, not of themselves or their party. So they have a little bit more integrity in the sense of, and that's what you were seeing with all this stuff for the House Speaker, was there's individualistic pride that they have. The Democrats don't have that. They have a group, and then they are gung-ho knit with that group. If something they don't like happens, very rarely do they break ranks and separate from there.
Yeah, I'd love to sit in on a Democratic caucus meeting to see what threats get levied out there.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about stuff like that, it just seems more likely that you're going to have, to your point, they're more extreme from where they were 4 to 6 years ago. Even no matter what they tell you on the media, because the media tells you Republicans are the ones who turned way more extreme. But Democrats are the ones, if you look to where they were 6 years ago to now, they've gone way left. So they're going to just pull out big chunks of people who are going to start their own little things. Yes, granted, they might all coalesce at the end of it, but I think it's going to be so drastically different in the party that they can't coalesce back together. And then you're going to see those, like you said, like the European style, the UK style, where all these little group pockets of parties around. But I think you're going to see that, like, let's say hypothetically, Republicans right now are 45, Democrats are 45%, and then there's 10% independent. What you'll see is maybe Republicans go to 40, but Democrats are going to go to 25, and then there's going to be 4 or 5% parties around. So the Republicans are going to hurt a little, but very little compared to what's going to happen in Democrats.
Oh, totally. I think if you had like the socialist progressives splinter off from the Democratic Party, would be good for the Democratic Party, I think, good for America as a whole, because then we could actually probably get stuff done without having, and the socialists would truly be out in name, but be instead of walking around with the guise of being Democrat. But I think it would be interesting. I thought maybe Trump was going to bring that forward in 2016 by splitting the Republican Party, which I was kind of worried about. But it seemed like he was able to kind of provide some leadership. It seemed like the Republican Party was lacking, giving them I just felt like the Republican Party was bland. So it gave them a little bit of spice, a little bit of fight. And now we do have good leaders like Matt Gaetz, Ron DeSantis, even transforming some old stale Republicans like Ted Cruz, like Lindsey Graham, kind of lighting a new fire under them and kind of seeing them peel back towards a little bit more conservative, to a more conservative bend, which is always good too.
And I think that's what they're going to look for with all this Biden document stuff. What they're in the meantime, what they're going to put out, that guy I said, the person they're going to put out that's going to see if it sticks, they're going to look for someone who has that kind of Trump persona, someone who can just go in there and shake up the party, whether they go in screaming or like I don't know what the angle is going to be, but they're going to look for that kind of a polarizing figure. Like who knows? It probably wouldn't happen. Like I'd be shocked if it did. But they're going to look for like an Oprah to run to be the new party. You know what I'm saying? Someone who's a celebrity, everyone likes them, that they can put in there. That's their Trump to take over and reshuffle up their group. So basically, what I'm saying is Oprah's going to run for president.
I hope Oprah doesn't run for president. So I think we have a lot to look forward to for our next debate. We'll see our next podcast. We'll see if anybody else in the Democratic Party gets shuffled to the front, or maybe Biden gets. Maybe we'll be meeting next month and Biden won't even be president. We'll be saying President Harris.
I could only hope.
And maybe President Pelosi.
Maybe our borders will be secure.
They're already secure. I don't know what you're talking about. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the Big Red for America show. See you all next time.